Hello, welcome to Truth Sentinel, watching over the truth in the news. Today's date is the 7th of July 2014. A warm welcome to everyone. Thanks for your support, thanks for listening. Always appreciate it. Currently in London, returned from the Ukraine. Been back for a few days now. Just enjoying the weather in London. It was actually sunny earlier today, but it's now raining. Today's news. David Cameron has pledged to get to the truth of historical child sex abuse claims amongst politicians and even the cabinet of the UK Parliament. And there's supposed to be an announcement today of an inquiry that's going to take place. The Prime Minister Cameron said that there will be no stone unturned to find out about what happened. I suspect that there will be a few stones left unturned personally. Those stones have been left unturned for many years now. They've known about these child abuse allegations for many years. It's a big cover-up. BBC's Nick Robinson said the inquiry would look at claims covering the government, the NHS, which is the UK's health service, and the BBC. There's already been quite a number of allegations and arrests at the BBC, including Jimmy Savile and more recently Rolf Harris. Theresa May is expected to outline the plans today in the Commons, and the Home Secretary will also tell members of Parliament about a separate review of whether her department failed to act on claims of a paedophile ring in the 1980s. It seems like a lot of their past is catching up with them, and they're desperately trying to cover up as much as possible. Ex-Home Secretary, so he was actually a member of the Cabinet, Leon Britton, welcomed the independent review into the missing files. I think when he uses that word welcomed, I think that's in the same way that you'd welcome, say, a 20-meter long crocodile into your house. He's not welcome at all because he's actually going to be part of the allegations. There's those that allege that he's been actually caught on video in some child pornography movies, alleged of course, but I think he's not going to be welcome this at all, and it was his responsibility to hand over the files. They've gone missing. I've heard a lot of rumours anyway that he's involved in this, and he will very quickly find himself accused of abuse. So they're probably desperately now trying to find any more files that they can throw away as well. There's even been allegations against a former Prime Minister and possibly even members of the royal family. Wouldn't it be great if they finally found enough evidence to put some of these people away, and so they can get the message that doesn't matter how important they perceive themselves to be, they're still not above the law. In Ukraine is to blockade two major cities which are still in rebel hands. It continues its operations against pro-Russian separatists. Ukrainian officials said they would now lay siege to the regional centres of Lugansk and Donetsk. Government forces regained control of the key rebel strongholds of Sloviansk and Kramatorsk on Saturday. Who knows what's going to happen in Ukraine? It was quite peaceful when I left, but that was not the east, that was in Odessa, Ukraine, where there were problems a month previously, but everything's okay there now. I think it depends what Russia's going to do next. Heathrow Airport has told passengers to ensure all electronic devices carried as hand baggage are charged before travel if they're flying to the US. The UK government has also revised its rules to state that if a device doesn't switch on, you won't be allowed to bring it on to the aircraft. I wonder if this has anything to do with the NSA, so they can gather your data from your switched on laptop but not from when it's switched off, because we all know that they actually don't care about your safety, so this must be for some other ulterior motive. I would imagine this has got nothing to do with any particular terrorist threat, as is the case with all the confiscation of deodorants and liquids. In my opinion, it's got nothing to do with security measures. There's some ulterior motive. Some say it's conditioning to get you used to being stopped and searched and under a military police state. Who knows, but I don't believe that they actually care about your safety. In the week's news, there was a lot of a lot of news articles about the deaths of the Israeli teenagers, and then the subsequent death of and murder of the Palestinian boy, reportedly beaten and then burned alive. The Palestinian Hamas movement has promised revenge after Israeli airstrikes in Gaza, and Hamas said one strike near Rafah killed 5 of its fighters. But the Israeli military said the men appeared to have died after handling explosives in a tunnel. It's a constant battle of words and actual literal bombs as well. And it's all in response to, well, the latest tensions are in response to this, the Israeli teenagers that were killed, and then now this Palestinian youth who was killed. On Sunday, Israeli police said they had arrested 6 Jewish suspects in connection with the death of that boy, Mohammed Abu Qadir, last week. I hope at least they are given proper justice for what they did. Last episode we had the second part of our discussion with Douglas Dietrich about Satanism in the military. I hope you enjoyed that. Remember to keep letting us know what topics you'd like to hear about. Today we're going to be talking to Lorien Fenton about Supersoldiers and mind control. I'll introduce Lorien later. Remember to check out our Facebook and Twitter page. If you do a search for Truth Sentinel or Scott Sentinel, you should find us. Any emails you want to send for any reason at all, scottsentinel9@gmail.com. That's scottsentinel9@gmail.com. Thanks to anyone who posts this show on your channel. I really appreciate if you're doing that, like Ron Gibson, for example, who also puts up Alex Jones's videos. If you are able to sort of spread Truth Sentinel out on the internet, make sure as many people as possible can see it, I would appreciate that. Especially if you see one of those channels that uploads quite a few videos, like Conspiracy Vault, for example. If you request that they put up our videos, then they'll probably do so. Help me to help you have a good listening experience, and let's get some more listeners if we can. Topics coming up in future episodes could include world disasters, honour killings, mysterious celebrity deaths, planned obsolescence, patterns in world events, the Dyatlov Pass incident, religious cults, really anything that comes on our radar. Other shows I've been listening to, I've been mostly listening to Hagman and Hagman, occasionally Alex Jones. I do find Alex Jones is concentrating a bit too much on the immigration issue. I know it's a big issue, it's an issue in the US, in the UK, with the lack of control over immigration. No one's saying they don't want people of different cultures to come into countries. There's just some control issues regarding benefits, I think, is the main problem for a lot of people. Yeah, I don't think it's good for people to travel to another country purely for benefits. But I'm not against immigration. But I think Alex Jones is focusing a bit too much on it lately. You know, people want a bit of balance. Seems it's gone. But I'll still continue listening. I would just say, just stop focusing so much on that one issue. It's getting a little bit boring, shall I say. So let's talk a bit about mind control anyway. Mind control, also known as brainwashing or coercive persuasion. Thought control or thought reform. Have you had your thoughts reformed today? Maybe if you've watched TV, you might have done. It's a theoretical, although in many cases literal in the past, and probably up until the present as well, indoctrination process, which results in an inability to think independently. You could definitely say that about the vast majority of people in society seem to have lost their ability to think independently or critically about what they see on TV. Mind control is also a disruption of beliefs and affiliations, and re-education of basic beliefs and values. So Project MKUltra, sometimes referred to as the CIA's mind control program, is the name of the US government human research operation experimenting in the behavioural engineering of humans, a bit like the UK child abuse files. Most MKUltra records were deliberately destroyed in 1973 by order of the CIA director Richard Helms. So it's been quite difficult, if not impossible, for investigators really to get a complete understanding of what MK Ultra were up to. And if you look at the stuff we know about them, it makes you wonder what they were doing that we didn't find out about, because they're sure to have destroyed the worst stuff first of all. So in 1945, the Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency was established and given a direct responsibility for Operation Paperclip, which is the program that recruited former Nazi scientists. They were perfect for this kind of work. Other projects included Project Chatter, Project Bluebird, and Project Artichoke. Okay, so they used things like LSD to experiment on people, sometimes with their knowledge, often without their knowledge. They also used other substances, substances which promoted illogical thinking and impulsiveness, substances which caused permanent brain damage and loss of memory. They were trying to experiment with brain washing and erasing people's minds. This was all, a lot of these people were people either taken straight off the streets or who were in institutions such as colleges, universities, hospitals. This also included children. Remember, all against the will. This was found out. It would never have been discovered otherwise. This was found out using whistleblowers and investigative journalism when it existed in those days, and caused President Clinton to have to apologize for this. But it's still got ongoing. There's been people come forward who've said this is continuing, and in some cases even worse than what they were doing before. So we're going to be talking to Lorien Fenton about this topic. So I mean, a lot of people find it kind of a subject which they would just say is conspiracy theory that doesn't exist. Well, you know, it did exist. These are things that were found out, were all admitted to and apologized for, and there's people saying it still exists. So bear that in mind, I think, when we, if you're a bit skeptical about this topic, do some research into CIA mind control programs, and you'll find out what they did. I mean, most of what I've just told you is available on Wikipedia. We're also going to talk about super soldiers. I mean, when I think of super soldiers, I think of Dolph Lundgren, the guy from Universal Soldier. But I mean, a lot of this is also in the mind, you know, being strong in the mind or controlling someone using their mind. I actually did this interview with Lorien in a hotel with paper-thin walls, so at one point towards the end we have to stop because I'm keeping people awake. But today we're going to listen to part 1 of my chat with Lorien Fenton, who's an authority on this mind control and super soldier topic. Before we do, I just wanted to mention one case in the UK which people think may have been 2 girls that escaped from some kind of super soldier project, which was 2 Swedish girls called Ursula and Sabina Eriksson, who one day were acting very strangely on the motorway in the UK. They were trying to throw themselves in front of cars when they were questioned by the police as to what they were doing on the motorway. One got crushed by a lorry, had broken bones and everything, and the other one got hit by a car. This can all be seen on video, by the way, because they were videoing a documentary at the time. You can actually see them getting hit by the cars and the lorries. The one that's just been hit by a car, although initially unconscious, the police check if she's okay, and then she gets up and starts fighting. It takes about 6 policemen to hold her down. So that's where the super strength subject sort of makes people think that maybe they escaped from a super soldier program. And they were also saying strange things like, "You're not real. You're not real," and the fact they were behaving very strangely by throwing themselves in front of cars. And then later, one of them went on to kill a man as well. Rather than going into the full story, I recommend that you watch Motorway Madness. If you type in Motorway Madness on YouTube and type in Ursula and Sabina Eriksson or Swedish Twin Sisters and Motorway Madness, they should come up with a documentary. You can actually see it's all filmed. It's not reconstructed. These are the actual videos, apart from the murder, I think, which was obviously reconstructed. Check that out, see what you think anyway. So my next guest is Lorien Fenton, who became actively involved in the San Francisco Bay Area UFO community after almost dying from a mysterious form of pneumonia during the H1N1 scare of summer 2009. That's something we actually have in common, because I think it was actually the same year as well. I also got pneumonia when staying in Ukraine during the H1N1 virus scare there. And I had some mysterious form of pneumonia and was 10 days in hospital. So Lorien Fenton had a similar thing. It inspired her to do work in the communities that she's now involved in. She's now section director in Petulama, California, on the first Saturday of every month at the MUFON Marin Sonoma, which is www.mufonmarinsonoma.com. So Lorien's going to tell us about how she got into this. Her current work includes being a business manager, covering all aspects of web design and marketing and PR, often related to UFO, paranormal, alien, mind control, super soldiers, black ops. She's going to tell us a bit more about the topic and then talk about how she sometimes works and meets with super soldiers at mind control and super soldier conventions. So let's go over to Lorien now. Okay, hello Lorien.
Hi there. How are you doing, Scott?
Very good today, actually. Yeah, I think we were just having a quick chat before we started, and you were saying you're a bit of a night person, and so am I. So I'm just starting to come awake now, and it's 11 o'clock over here, and I'm starting to wake up. But welcome to Truth Sentinel.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's really
wonderful to be here.
Really good of you to take the time out and come and speak to us. What kind of things are you going to be talking about today?
Well, as we discussed earlier, I think it's time to start legitimizing my story about mind control and the super soldiers and the black ops people and the my labs and the aliens. They're all part of this. A lot of people have been getting, it's a long story and we'll get into it, but I've been getting a lot of flack. I produce the mind control summits, and I'm involved with politics, and I have my own radio show. And one of the things that I've noticed in the last year since being involved with the whole mind control issue is that people really don't understand it, and they're very afraid of it. And I try my best to bring conferences out there for people, and so that they can hear the experts in the field. They can also see the people that are being targeted through the targeting programs here in the United States, and also in Europe, Japan, China. It's all over the world now. And I try to bring them all together so that people understand that this is an issue. It's not something these people are all making up, and they're not all crazy. And I do my best to make it very, very, I want to say almost academic, in an educational style, so people understand that, these people are not nuts. And it's just amazing to me how much flack I get for believing in it. To this day, it's amazing. Even, and I'm not going to say what, where, and when it's all coming from, but I get attacked constantly by and even friends and people in the community, in the UFO community, don't even understand all this. So, it's very interesting to me. Oh, and another thing, Scott, the conscious life community here in the United States is huge. I don't know if you know much about it.
What's that? What's the conscious life community?
Yeah, it's people like Stephen Greer, which I don't know if you've heard of.
Yeah, I've heard of him. Wasn't he part of the Disclosure Project?
Exactly. Yeah. So Stephen Greer, I'm not going to mention a whole lot of names, but David Wilcock and just a whole bunch of people that are what I would call Foster Gamble, who did the Thrive movie. All these people that are in this opening consciousness. We're all going to ascend, and good aliens are going to be here to help us, and this whole bit. They don't even want to recognize that mind control is going on. It's so bizarre to me. I actually spoke at the New Living Expo here in San Mateo in the San Francisco Bay Area. I was at 5 o'clock on Friday night, which is they call it the dead time, because hardly anybody shows up for your presentation. And it's when the conference just starts to open, and there's hardly anybody there because the traffic is so bad getting there at 5 o'clock. Nobody can get there anyhow. So, but I was amazed. I I did it basically so I'd have a recording of it. I figured I'd be the only one in the room and give my presentation. But I had 25 people come out that had read in the program that I was talking about mind control, super soldiers, my labs, and that type of, the whole black area of consciousness that people just don't want to get to. And it was amazing to me what these people had to say. Afterwards, we all sat around and talked, and they were like, oh my God, these things have been happening to me. Nobody believes me. And it's much worse. I mean, people are they're being abducted by aliens, and it's becoming quite norm for that to happen. Ever since Whitley Strieber in the 70s, it's become one of those things you can talk about. There's experiencers groups all over the West Coast. There's therapists that do abduction therapy, post-traumatic stress disorder therapy for alien abductees, but there's nobody out there helping the people that are involved in the mind control issue. And I think it's because those people are all mind controlled as well. Okay.
Okay.
So
can I just ask a question?
Sure.
What would you define as a super soldier? What would you be talking about when you be using that term?
Well, I believe that there are many different levels of super soldier. And that was coined back in must have been the early 90s on the Art Bell show when Duncan O'Finian came on the show, I think for the first time, with Dave Corso. And these guys were Black Ops Navy SEALs back in the day, and I would say in the late 60s, 70s, and into the 80s. And they were used by the CIA and different, alphabet agencies here in the United States. And these guys were experimented upon. And they were experimented upon with metal rods being put in place of bones. They were all chipped. People think that these chips just came out a few, 5-10 years ago. Wrong, folks. These chips, where they keep track of you and can tell your bodily, like your heartbeat, your respiration rate, and all that. And GPS, they had GPS way back then with satellites in the 70s, and people don't even realize that either. It was very crude compared to what we have now with our cell phones, but they had it. And anyhow, these guys were all experimented upon when they went into the military. One of the things I was told years ago was that what they used to do in the 70s and into the 80s is the guys would all be at boot camp, and they would sit there the first day of training, and they would have some guy come in who was usually a psychologist come in and start droning on and on about what their training's going to be, and it would be in a monotone voice, and he'd go on and on and on, and they make him sit there for 8 hours. And the guys who started falling asleep at the very beginning, that couldn't stand it and couldn't keep alert and couldn't stay awake, they were easily hypnotized. That was what they decided with these guys, and they were the guys that were pulled out of these classrooms and pulled into these special op programs. So very interesting.
Took advantage of them while they were sort of in the sort of sleepy.
They were vulnerable, yeah.
Oh, that's horrible. I hope they never do that to me, because I'm useless when I'm tired. If I don't get my 8 hours sleep every night, then I can become quite zombie-like.
Well, I think it was more like when the guy's droning on, and basically they were hypnotizing them, and they just wanted to see who would nod out the fastest. And those guys were considered very pliable, very usable, and they would start training them, and they go through rigorous training without even knowing they're going through it to see if they can be used in these programs. Okay, so I heard this. Okay, but going back to what a super soldier is, the definition for me is that it has many levels, so many levels, and the Duncan O'Finian era, what I call the Omega guys, the original Omega teams, were actual soldiers, and I think that's where the coining came, super soldier. And also they were doing a lot of things like they did with the $6 Million Man on TV that people just, they thought it was all fantasy. Well, they were trying to do that with these guys. And this was back in the end of the Vietnam era, and they were also, at the time, probably trying breeding programs just like, I tell people this and they think I'm absolutely out of my mind. Did you ever see the movie The Boys from Brazil?
No, I don't think so. I've watched
Oh,
a lot
if
of
you
movies,
haven't,
but no, I
yeah,
don't
if
think
you
so.
haven't seen it, Scott, you've got to see it. I think that movie scared me more than anything I've ever seen.
What's that
It
about?
was about, yeah, it was about Mengele living in Brazil, cloning Hitler. And, had all these volunteer German women to have the baby, and they put them in a situation in a home where it was the same type of thing, where the mother was domineering, the father was docile, and they went all throughout the world finding homes where they could have this child raised to become a psychopath.
That sounds like a good film anyway. Yeah.
It was absolutely fantastic, and but I think that is much more closer to what was really going on in the 70s and 80s, as far as not necessarily cloning, but using different people from different bloodlines to create very psychic people. And I believe the psychic element is a huge part of the you want to call it super soldier program, I call it super consciousness program, okay? Because this is another whole type. You have the physical guys that are doing the shooting and the killing, then you've got the people that are like in the movie Minority Report, where they're connecting with these guys psychically and helping them in the field or fighting whatever it is they're fighting. And we got to remember something else. There's the whole play of maybe a secret space program going on at the time, and maybe using these super soldiers to deal with the alien threats that may be coming to this planet that we've never known about. Like, who do you deploy when a giant spider ends up here that's going to eat us all?
Not me, that's for sure, because I'm petrified of spiders.
I'm using far out examples, and it's probably a lot less in how it actually is going about, but I want people to understand there is some type of secret space program. There has been for a very, very long time, at least here in the United States. When you look up in the sky and you see spacecraft, if you're a contactee and you're seeing spacecraft, I can almost guarantee 60 to 75% of those craft are ours. I don't think there's as much alien presence here as people want to believe. I really believe it's our stuff. And I believe we've been going into outer space, or at least our galaxy, for quite some time now, with the help of some other form of life. Now, I don't know if we're actually transversing time and space like Star Trek. I don't know if we're going through wormholes. I don't know if they have some type of propulsion that makes it so we can just travel around our planets and our sun and what have you, without radiation death, which is huge. But anyhow, I mean, if you get scientific about it, there's so many obstacles. But I really need people to understand that this all could be very true. It also, and here's the kicker on this, Scott, this is what really blows people away, and they have a very, very hard time understanding it, is that it may be that it's all in an AI consciousness, just like the Matrix, and all of it is taking place in a holographic universe within all of our minds connected like a hive mind.
You mean like we're living in some kind of like a simulated universe?
Well, we are. Our 3D reality that we look out and see is the simulated universe, and all the mind control stuff with the secret space programs, the super soldiers, and all that may be what I call an interdimensional existence that we have. Like, okay, I'm going to give a great example for this. There's a guy, his name is Rich Rogers. He wrote a book. He was at my first Super Soldier conference, and the book is about how when he goes to sleep at night, he's taken to another reality. He is trained there to work against, with, and for whatever command is using him in a super soldier or super light warrior program, okay? They have fought battles on different planets. They have fought them in different universes, this type of thing. Now, he thought he was just having vivid dreams that were just out of this world, okay? Until his son would sit there with him at breakfast. He was about 12 or 13, and he'd say, "Man, I had the strangest dream last night, Dad. I was doing blah, blah, blah." And he just about fell off his chair the very first time he heard it, because in his reality, in his dream, in his dimension, wherever he was at, his son was there doing exactly what he was telling him at the breakfast table.
Oh, that would freak me out for sure.
Yes. So at that point, his paradigm, his whole reality changes, because then he realizes there's somebody using me in some holographic way or dimensional way or something in a different dimension. And I just was like, when I heard this, I was blown away. Now, having heard that from Rich Rogers way back in the beginning of me doing my research on all this, I ran across a guy named Bernie Mendez. And he told me, and he's now here's another kicker. Oh my God. Okay, first I want to explain something to everybody. I see this as a giant spider web, and I see in the middle the answers to the universe, and it may be the number 42. I don't know. Oh, but every strand of the web, every connection to the major strands in the web is an experience had by any of these people, and I give each strand a different name. One is time travel, one is dimensional travel, one is a super soldier program and how they physically work with them, another one is secret space program, another one is alien contact, another one, I go right down the list. I don't think they're all separate issues. I think they're all one issue that we have yet to put together in the center and find out the key. Okay? Mm-hmm. I think they're all the answer to consciousness and how we function here in this matrix level. And I have a good friend named Andrew Bashagio. I don't know if your listeners have heard of him, but he's the guy that swears he time traveled, and that he was part of a project called Project Pegasus back in the 70s and 80s. And his stories have never deviated. He's never changed anything. He's a brilliant man. He's an attorney. But, I believe that maybe they were putting him into an induced type of mind control to make him think that that's where he went and what have you. But what's interesting is that he has also said the same things that Rich Rogers has said, that he felt like he was falling asleep or going through this elevator process onto planet Mars. Okay? So who knows if this isn't all the same type of thing going on, and that we're all just perceiving it in different levels. And anyhow, I astray here, as they say, but anyhow, so we were talking about super soldiers, and it's a much more complex problem, and I now put it all under what I call the mind control conundrum, because it really is that. And there's two other pieces to this. We have the black ops people that are doing the mind control, and we have how they do it. And that is extremely important for people to understand, that it has become so technological to the point where they used to chip people and put, super strong bones in them and what have you. Now they just, they do some kind of induction where they hypnotize them, they use drugs on them, and this was in the 90s and the early 2000s, okay? Now, they don't even need to do that. Now they just zap with a cell phone, give you a signal in your ear, maybe a high-pitched squeal that you don't know what it is, and that will have you doing something for them for 2 weeks, an hour, 15 minutes, whatever, and you won't even remember it.
That's scary.
How's that for sophisticated? Yeah.
And we do know that the government has admitted they've done experiments in the past using mind control. I mean, that was it.
Sure.
Project MK Ultra in the 50s and 60s. I mean, they did actually apologise. That I was talking to Douglas Dietrich about that. I mean, Bill Clinton actually apologised for what they did, because they did some disgusting things during that.
Oh, yes.
I mean, testing people with radioactive substances, using LSD. This was all without them knowing, traumatizing them, torturing them, trying to brain damage them. I mean, people, I think people just forget about that. It's, it happened in the past and people have forgotten, but this was actually condoned by the government, wasn't it?
Oh yes, absolutely. And if you think that's what we know about. That's what Bill Clinton knows about. Do you know how deep that rabbit hole goes? I mean, that's just the surface. People have no
we don't
idea.
know. We don't know if it's still continuing. I mean, I would
It is
imagine it
continuing.
is. Yeah, it probably is.
Yeah, if they tell it, well, back in the day, they said it was stopped. It never stopped. It just got more clandestine and more clandestine, and it just never stopped. And Scott, the part about this whole thing that really, really bothers me is that people are so mind controlled to this day that, I feel like my mission in life, ever since I had my, what I call awakening to this, I have been ridiculed, I've been, I made fun of, I have had no help in putting on my conferences. I put on another conference here in the Bay Area called UFO Con. It's all about aliens, and it's actually kind of fun to do, and I always get people say, oh yeah, here, I'll be a partner, I'll help you with that, and everybody has a good time, and we talk about aliens and abduction and UFOs and all that, and it's become so mainstream that it's not easy, and nobody ridicules me for putting it on, and it's easy getting funding. I put on the mind control summits, and my God, it's like pulling teeth, and then I get kicked out of the places I've rented. My website's hacked for 6 months. No one can buy a ticket. I mean, it is just phenomenal. The type of clandestine, undercover people after me for putting on this event. Now, I put on 3 of them, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to put on another, because they've gotten to the point now where I can't even rent a space to put it on, because every time I try to, I get a phone call back saying, oh, I'm sorry, we don't have any space for you, or we don't, or they just never call me back. Whereas if I'm putting on anything else, people call me back in 30 seconds because they want the money, right?
And what usually goes on at a mind control summit? Is it a number of people speaking?
Oh my gosh! Oh, Scott, I wish you could have been at the last one. I think my last one was truly the best one I've ever done. I had 8 speakers, and I have 2 nights of experiencers. That's what I call them. Friday night is for the people that think they're in the what I call Super Soldier My Labs category. And then on Saturday night, we start on Friday night at 6 o'clock. We do Super Soldiers, My Labs, and all that type of consciousness, secret space program pilots, and whoever thinks they're whatever they are on Friday night. And they talk about it, and they explain to people what's happened to them, and how it affects their lives, and what's going on with them. It's fascinating stuff. And then on Saturday during the day, we have 4 or 5 expert speakers, maybe 6. I can't even remember at this point. I should probably bring up the website, huh? And then Saturday night, we have what we call the targeted individuals, and these are the people that are being electronically harassed. And I found local people in Las Vegas to come in and talk about their electronic harassment and what they've done to them. And man, oh man, unbelievable stuff. I mean, this is the nuts and bolts physical stuff. This is where they're zapping you with electronics. This is where they're gang stalking you. This is where they're trying to push you to your limits to see what you'll do. As a matter of fact, Aaron Alexis, the Naval Yard shooter, was in contact with some of the people that I had speaking at my summit as experts. And he was talking about the electromagnetic frequency that they were pulsating on him all the time, so he could never sleep, and they were telling him to kill people. And this all involves voice-to-skull communication technology, where they're talking to these people 24/7 in their head with no relief in sight. And they say,
I must admit, I've often wondered, when you get sort of people who a lot of people label as nutcases, who end up killing someone, and they always do actually say, they refer to the voices in their head that told them to do it. I've heard of numerous cases where they've mentioned voice in their head, and I've often wondered, why don't they investigate about these voices? What's causing them?
Well, that's because the medical community has labeled them all schizophrenic, which I find absolutely fascinating. And believe me, there's a lot. The first thing I talk to people about when they come to me and they say, oh, I'm being mind controlled, I'm a super soldier, I'm this, I'm that, I say, hey, are you on any antidepressant drugs, and have you ever been diagnosed as a schizophrenic? That's the first thing I ask them. And if they tell me they've never been to a psychiatrist or a psychologist to be diagnosed for anything, I say, I can't talk to you until you go to one. Because I want to make sure that you are actually not having any physical, chemical problems in your life. If this is truly happening to you, we have to rule all that out.
How would you tell the difference between someone who did have some kind of mental issue?
I have talked to quite a few that have been diagnosed with schizophrenia that I actually believe are being targeted. And so in answer to your question, it's really hard to tell, because in some cases they use people who do have psychological problems in the project just because they use them, I think, as a baseline. You know, this person is nuts, let's see how much further we can push them. And so that person, I think, is their baseline, and then they go on and they use people that aren't. And how can I tell the difference? It's very difficult to tell the difference. There are 2 or 3 questions I have that I've learned from psychologists and from people in the projects to ask. And I can't really tell you what they are, because if I do, then everybody will figure out what it is, and then I won't be able to use that anymore as a gauge. But they're very soul-searching questions that the answer is always the same if they are being affected. And I can tell you that, and it's real easy to tell from that question forward whether they're nuts or not. And when I say nuts, I say that lovingly, folks, because I think we're all affected a little bit. You know, we're all just a little bit crazy. I don't think anybody can be here in this day and age with the technology and the interference we have from electronic communication and the harassment that they're doing to us just by living on a day-to-day basis. The television, the cell phone, and the satellites out there right now are all very much a part of all this. So, you know, there isn't anybody, unless they live on a farm in the middle of, you know, the Arctic somewhere, that's not being affected at this point.
We are being bombarded with all kinds of different waves, you know, like with Wi-Fi signals and radio signals.
Exactly. You know, I was just talking to a good friend last night, and he said to me, he goes, Lorien, there isn't anybody affected by this. He goes, I just, you know, he doesn't understand why I'm out there preaching this. I feel like, you know, I'm the preacher on the soapbox sitting there in the middle of the street screaming and no one's listening to me, because, you know, he says, you know, no one cares. And I said, boy, isn't that the truth? They really don't care. And this is a major, major issue. See, that's how insidious this mind control has become. We've all become mind controlled to the point where they have got us so that we don't pay any attention to the fact that they're mind controlling us. It's absolutely amazing to me that people aren't aware of what's going on to them. They don't acknowledge what is happening to them. You know, it's very interesting to me that we have bred that out of the human being. I think we are at that stage of transhumanism. I think we're at the stage where we're turning into mind-controlled robots. And anyhow,
who's actually targeting these people? I mean, is it secret government agencies? Who's behind it all, do you think?
Well, that's a good question, and the reason I'm pausing to think about it is because right off the bat I came up with 3 or 4 different groups already. We have the Black Ops people in the CIA and the FBI who do the low-level type of control with scopolamine and
what's scopolamine?
Scopolamine is a type of drug that will. It's also called the date rape drug. What it does is it makes you compliant. You will do anything anybody tells you, and then when it wears off, you won't remember anything that you did.
That sounds like alcohol.
Well, it's a much stronger, more potent version of it, and they've been using it all over the world to steal from tourists. Isn't that interesting? They slip it in their drinks, then they tell the tourists to go to their ATMs, pull out all their money, give it to them, and then the guys wake up the next day and they have nothing.
Now you are scaring me, because I'm currently a tourist in Ukraine. So I'm going to be careful
Well,
who I
you
drink
got to
with.
be very sophisticated to get your hands on that stuff. But see, that's the level that the CIA or the FBI or the NSA or the Black Ops people would be doing something. Then there's the level deeper than that where they're using Navy SEALs or very deep Black Ops military to sit in front of electronic, boards or computers and do the voice-to-skull communication where they're constantly in rotation 24/7 around the clock through different guys, beaming some type of electronic signal into some person's head.
Is there any actual evidence of that? I mean, or is it just witness accounts? I mean, is there any way to prove that?
There isn't, and not yet, because no one has broken into these facilities to find these guys yet actually doing it, but I think they're becoming very close, and they are listening to us right now. If you don't believe that, then we're in big trouble, but they are listening to us right now, and I believe that they're laughing because they think that they'll never get caught. But I'm hoping that one of these days, one of them will slip up enough that when he's talking to these guys in their head, they'll somehow give away their location, and that we are able at that point to, through groups like Freedom from Covert Harassment, Electronic Harassment Surveillance, will be able to gather enough people together to kind of bring, storm the building or wherever they're at and prove to the United States people and the people of the world that these guys are actually in operations doing this. My fear is that they're doing it on a military base, and it'll be very hard to get in there and do that kind of thing. But if they're subcontractors out just in a building, in an office building somewhere, hopefully we'll be able to catch them at some point. There are many people out there right now that are saying that the guys talking to them in their head are becoming more and more familiar with them while they're talking to them, the longer they try to control them. So we're hoping that they start slipping up. A couple of them have mentioned that these guys have told them they are Navy SEALs, they are an unnumbered team of SEALs. They are hired just for their computer skills and their Black Ops training, and they train them in Black Ops. And then but they're Navy SEALs as well, so they can defend themselves or take care of themselves or go out on a mission if they have to.
Why would they be doing it? Are they doing it to as a kind of form of torture, or is it an experiment? Why are they actually doing it?
I believe it is a giant experimentation. And you know where it all stems from? This is very interesting. This is just my take on where it all stems from. I think it all stems from the first alien encounter that we had back in, God knows what, 30s, 40s, 50s, or whenever, where the aliens actually were doing telepathy with us and communicating with us with our minds. And at that point in time, there are many scientists that have retired now that were working on these UFO projects way back in the day that have come out and said, look, the biggest threat to mankind is the fact that we can't communicate with these guys on their level. So I believe the MK Ultra program was not out of the Cold War theory that everybody has, that they say, oh yeah, the Cold War happened, we had to, they were doing psychic experiments and so we had to keep up with them. I think the whole thing was because we realized that there's no way that we have to start developing people that have much more brain power and able to handle this kind of thing, this telepathy, this constant bombardment in their brain, and the control that the aliens have over us. I'm not saying all aliens do, and I'm not even saying there's, many of them or one of them or any of them. But something happened back in the 40s or 50s where they realized we're not even going to be able to battle these guys if we can't at least do some type of telepathy. And I think that all of these programs started because of that. Now, they may have branched off into different reasons and why and how and what they're doing now, but isn't voice-to-skull communication basically somebody being beamed into your head and talking to you by telepathy? Maybe that's.
I believe there is known technology. I believe that where you can actually send sound waves into someone's head. I think people can actually research that on the internet. It does exist.
It does. Patrick Flanagan is the person who invented all this voice-to-skull communication back in the, I want to say 70s. And his was widely known, but that doesn't mean there weren't other scientists at the time that had been doing it earlier on than him and for different applications. But yeah, absolutely. They've been doing this type of thing where we're sending signals and receiving signals. Now, like I said, it's been 50 years since they've been doing all this. Their programs may have changed. They may be doing different studies now. They may be seeing how far they can push people before they'll kill somebody for them. They might be seeing how far they can push them to make them all like the project that they did in during the Gulf War, where they blasted all these guys with electronic frequencies, and they all were so fearful that they all got on their knees and said, we'll give up and do anything you want, and we're very compliant. That's a type of mind control, totally. It's completely,
It is weird. I mean, I know a lot of people listen to this kind of stuff about mind control, and they just think the government wouldn't do that. But I always do think it's really strange when the government have admitted they've done this in the past. So.
Oh yeah.
It's not science fiction. They've done it. There's a good chance they're still doing it.
Oh, very, very good chance. I mean, to me, it's 100%. I know they're doing it. And I really encourage people to read things like veteranstoday.com. There's quite a few, not all the time, but quite a few articles about the aliens, if you want to believe in aliens or fallen angels or whatever you want to believe in, and consciousness and mind control. The three very important issues that aren't addressed all the time by any mainstream media that I know of, besides Coast to Coast AM and a few of the alternative networks, like myself on Revolution Radio, and you here, Scott, on the Sentinel Report. Is it the Sentinel Report?
No, it's Truth Sentinel.
Truth Sentinel. I'm so sorry. Okay. That's much more important.
But I suppose each episode is kind of like a Sentinel report, so you're not far off.
So anyhow, I just, I don't even know where to start with all this, because it is truly a giant spider web, and I'm just grasping many pieces to it. And I suppose maybe it's a good time to go into how I became awakened to all this.
Yeah, please do.
I'd love to. And it's a little bit of a long story, folks, so hang in there with me. I'll try to make it as fast as possible. But in 2011, it was September 22nd and 23rd. I even know the dates because I went off to a conference in Los Angeles called the Awake and Aware Conference, put on by Kerry Cassidy of Project Camelot and Bill Ryan. He was still around and very much active with Project Camelot at the time. And I have to preface this with 6 months before that, I had been coming out of almost dying the year before, and I'd lost all my clients. I lost, everything. And I was starting to realize that I needed to do something that I loved instead of stuff that was corporate for a living. So I decided I have been producing conferences and seminars and art and music festivals and things for 25 years now. So I said, okay, what do I love doing? I'm not going to put on any more corporate events. I want to find something fun, something that I like, and that's where the whole UFO thing came into play. And I decided to do that, and I became a MUFON state section director. I don't know if anybody knows what MUFON is, but it's the Mutual UFO Network. It's one of the oldest organizations in the world. They're an international organization, and you guys can find out about them at MUFON.com. That's MUFON.com. And they're a wonderful organization in the fact that they're all volunteers. They're all kind of looking up in the skies at night looking for UFOs, and we have monthly meetings. And I thought, oh, it would be great. I'll run a monthly meeting and start talking about this whole phenomena. So this is kind of where my life was heading, and at that time I was listening to Kerry Cassidy's Project Camelot. This is in May, before the September trip, and she had a woman on her radio show called Asolaria Liberalis.
Wow, that's quite a name.
I know. And to me, she was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. She said some really amazing things about consciousness and about ascension and DNA and, things like that. And I thought, this is very intriguing. I want to know more. But she said one thing that really tweaked my brain. She said, if there are aliens out there, and she really believes there are, what she believes they had done is they had taken our DNA and they had put locks on it. And what you meant by locks wasn't necessarily like, putting a lock on it, but a definite biological lock so that we could not ascend to any other different type of being. And I thought that was fascinating. So at one point I said, I'd love to represent her. And I also represent people in the UFO, Bigfoot, whatever community as a manager. And I've been doing that for different speakers who've written bestsellers. So I thought, I'll just take it from the bestseller list over to the really esoteric people, and I'll start managing them for radio and TV and book deals and tours and that type of thing. So, and at one point I actually did a small tour for Michael Tellinger over here on the West Coast in the United States. Anyhow, bottom line, I was starting to pick up clients. I thought, wow, she'd be a great person to have as a client. So I gave her a call, and as I'm talking to her the second or third time, I think it was June, a helicopter, well, let me preface this. I'm talking to her, and as I'm talking to her, I made a very spiritual, core, mental decision that this is the type of thing I was going to do. I was going to start helping the world. I was going to start taking care of the world more than taking care of myself. And I don't know, it was a very core, conscious, spiritual decision, and I can't explain it to people, but I actually felt a spiritual shift within myself while she's talking to me. It's kind of like she was healing me in one way, but also at the same time I was changing my life too. It was a huge moment for me in a very subtle way. And the second I did that, the second I felt that shift, that I knew my direction, I was very powerful in that moment, this helicopter appears over my house. And it didn't come there. I didn't hear it showing up, nothing. It's just there, and it's really low, and it's circling, and it's really loud, and she can hear it. And she goes, oh, what's that? And I said, oh, it's a helicopter. It just got here. And then I realized I never heard it get there, and then I sent my roommate out to look at it, and he goes, yeah, it's a black helicopter. There's two guys in it. One guy's sitting by the door looking down on us, and they're circling nose down. And I said, well, how far off are they? And he said, about, God, not more than a couple hundred feet. And I said, oh, my God. And then suddenly, as we're talking about it, they take off. And we could hear them leaving. Okay. So now I'm prefacing all this because it plays a huge part in what happens in September. So in September, I call Asa Lauria in August. I say, hey, you want to come down to this conference with me? She says, sure. So she meets me in LA, and we go to the conference together. It's Friday night, and it is, oh, you guys, I've got a kitty cat that needs to be let out. Hold on just a second. Sorry to interrupt. There you go, sweetie. Go, go, go. Okay, sorry.
That's all right. No. We always welcome cats on the program as well.
Oh, great. Well, she just went outside, so she's done with us for now. You know how they are. They're aloof. Anyhow, so I'm down at this conference. It's Friday night, and Duncan O'Finian and Miranda, his girlfriend, or Axe, as her nickname is, are on stage, and it's the first time she's ever spoken on stage to anybody. The room is packed. I'm sitting there with Asa Lauria. We're listening to her speak, and she said something, and I about fell off my chair. I'm sitting there, and I hear her say, yes, and I hear this screaming in the back of my head all the time. And I was like, oh, my God. I'm looking around the room, and I'm looking around the room. Nobody else is looking around the room. I'm thinking, oh, what's going on here? This is so weird, because I had this, and it wasn't all the time. I had heard a woman's voice screaming at the top of her lungs as I was falling asleep and waking up, and it wasn't all the time, and it happened much more in my 20s than it did in my, late 40s or early 50s. And I couldn't meditate. Back in my 20s, I was trying to meditate, and I'd get to this place where I'd start hearing the screaming, and I'd have to stop. And I just stopped meditating because I thought, you know what, I don't want to go there. And I just, I blocked it out of my head as something that was happening to me. And then every once in a while, as I was waking up, I'd hear it, and I'd be falling asleep. I'd hear it, and I just never really paid much attention to it. I had talked to it. Now, I was in therapy a lot in my 20s and early 30s, a lot, because I had a very interesting upbringing, and I wanted to, not because it was traumatic or anything, but I wanted to get to the bottom of why my parents were the way they were. Turns out, we can run, but we cannot hide. I think I went from turning into my mother into my father now, so it's always interesting how that personality plays out. But I'm in therapy in my 20s, and I told the therapist about hearing this screaming when I was meditating. She said, oh, well, have you ever had anything traumatic happen to you as a child? And I said, yeah, when I was 18 months old, I ate rat poisoning and almost died. And she goes, oh, it's probably you screaming when you were a kid because they tied you down in the bed when you were a kid and, whatever. And I said, oh, okay. So I just let it go. I never really thought about it. I thought it was post-traumatic stress from something happening to me. So anyhow, I'm sitting there in the Orange County in Irvine listening to Miranda say this, and I thought, oh, my God, okay, well, that's weird that she says that. And my brain just lit up, and I'm going, oh my God, I wonder if I'm involved in any of this. It was just a very scary, weird moment for me. And so when the speech was over, Asa Laria says, I want to go talk to them. They have an answer for something. I got to talk to them. And at this point, I'm pretty freaked out. Now, I'm also going to add in one other preface to all this. As I was driving down to the OC for the conference, I am a conference producer as well. So I kept thinking, I saw that Duncan was speaking, and I thought to myself, I wonder why no one's ever put on a conference for these guys, idiot me. It'd be very interesting to do that. I think I'll talk to them about it when I'm down there. This is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking business. I'm, driving, and this is kind of inner dialogue I'm having. Maybe I should have a conference for them, blah, blah, blah. Well, stupid me, I'm down there, and I'm still thinking about maybe doing this conference, but now my mind's blown away, and I'm not sure what I'm doing there. And I realized my whole life is going to change this weekend. I had this horrible feeling that I was going to be in big trouble. Anyhow, as soon as she said the screaming in your head, I knew something was afoot. So I'm trying to avoid them like the plague. Asa Laria is trying to talk to them, and we have a table out in the lobby, and I said, let's just go back out to our table Friday night. And then I said, oh, let's just go back to the house. So she says, okay, I really want to talk to him. And I said, okay, we'll talk to him tomorrow. Okay, so we go back to the house Friday, nothing happens. We come back Saturday, and nothing eventful happened Saturday. I did speak to a couple of people. I spoke to Aaron McCullen. He was also there, and I asked him if he would be interested if we did some kind of super soldier conference, if he would be interested in speaking. He said he would. Everything was fine. I thought, oh, okay, I got one yes. Let's see what happens. And I must be stupid or brave. I don't know what it is, but I kept pursuing this conference. I don't know why I kept doing it. But anyhow, that night, I'm thinking, oh, I don't know if I want to talk to Duncan Miranda yet. And I keep telling Asa Laria, yeah, let's just go. Let's just get out of here. And she goes, no, I really want to talk to them. And I said, well, we'll talk to them tomorrow. I promise you we'll talk to them tomorrow. It's the last day of the conference. So after leaving, we come around the side of the building, and I'm trying to get out through, like, the garbage area out by the pool, and so no one can see us, right? So I think I'm being really sneaky, and I come around, and we hit the trash cans, and guess who's standing by them but Duncan and Miranda. So at that point, my life is going to change a little more. So Asa Laria immediately runs over to Duncan, and she's talking to him. And I start talking to Miranda, and I said to her, oh, yeah, I'm thinking about putting on a conference. Would you guys be interested? And we're talking and talking. I finally said to her, I said, hey, what's that whole thing with the screen in your head? She goes, that's just the horrible thing, that's happened, blah, blah. And I said, well, I think I have it too. And she looked at me, and this is probably, Scott, the best advice out of all the things that have happened to me in my life, of anything that's ever happened to me. She gave me the best advice, and I want to thank her to this day. Every time I talk about it, I thank her. She said, Lorien, maybe you don't want to know about it. And I'll explain that to you folks later, why that was so profound.
Thanks again to Lorien, and apologies for the abrupt ending, which you'll hear in next episode, part 2. Someone was banging hard on the door, so I had to go and answer it because it was late at night and people were trying to sleep. Lorien asked me to mention that if you want to watch the Supersoldiers and Mind Control Summit, go to the mindcontrolsummit.com and click on the On Demand tab, and you can have $10 off by using the code JOHN23. That's a capital J, and the rest is lowercase then 23. So that's mindcontrolsummit.com. I'll double check the address, but it should be mindcontrolsummit.com. I'll check it again and repeat this in the next episode, part 2. Okay, so let's just round off today's episode. By the way, I found Lorien really easy to talk to, and it's within all our interests, I think, to keep an open mind to the mind control topic and to be aware of it in all its forms. I mean, it's probably going on these days, and it's happening around us. We're probably to some extent unaware of it, and to some extent we're all probably being mind controlled as well, to a certain extent. You think they did those experiments in the 50s and 60s and 70s for no reason? They did them for a reason, and I'm sure they've worked out how to control people's minds as a population as well as individuals. I think they needed to know how populations and individuals would react in certain situations, so that when those situations occur, they'll know what to expect. I guarantee you, a government official will either be apologising for new experiments that have been discovered in 20 years from now, or perhaps they won't ever be discovered, but I'm sure they're happening. As Lorien said, the stuff we know about was just because it seeped out into the open. I think there's lots of other stuff that would have terrified us if we knew about it, so perhaps it's better we don't. Remember, as always, blind belief in authority is the greatest enemy of truth. Thanks, Einstein, again for that. That message will be on the back of Truth Sentinel t-shirts, which will have the Truth Sentinel logo, plus some political slogans on the back, which we're going to do in a couple of colours. Let me know if you're interested in one. I'm not going to even try and sell them. I'm just interested in how many people might be interested in one of those. We might even be able to do some tailor-made ones with bespoke kind of messages on the back. Remember, we're all about spreading tolerance on here, looking for peaceful yet revolutionary change to make a better society, and at the moment we think that could be done if enough people spread the word and started to question the truth and have a lot less respect for the people in charge, which some people just give them too much respect. Remember to email us scottsentinel9@gmail.com if you want to come on the show, talk about anything. If you're a whistleblower and you want to give us some information, that's always welcome. Thanks again for listening. Catch you later. Goodbye. Must be for some other ulterior motive. I would imagine this has got nothing to do with any particular terrorist threat, as is the case with all the confiscation of deodorants and liquids. In my opinion, it's got nothing to do with security measures. There's some ulterior motive. Some say it's conditioning to get you used to being stopped and searched and under a military police state. Who knows, but I don't believe that they actually care about your safety. In the week's news, there was a lot of news articles about the deaths of the Israeli teenagers, and then the subsequent death and murder of the Palestinian boy, reportedly beaten and then burned alive. The Palestinian Hamas movement has promised revenge after Israeli airstrikes in Gaza. And Hamas said one strike near Rafah killed 5 of its fighters. but the Israeli military said the men appeared to have died after handling explosives in a tunnel. It's a constant battle of words and actual literal bombs as well. And it's all in response to, well, the latest tensions are in response to this, the Israeli teenagers that were killed, and then now this Palestinian youth who was killed. On Sunday, Israeli police said they had arrested 6 Jewish suspects in connection with the death of that boy, Mohammed Abu Qadir, last week. I hope at least they are given proper justice for what they did. Last episode we had the second part of our discussion with Douglas Dietrich about Satanism in the military. I hope you enjoyed that. Remember to keep letting us know what topics you'd like to hear about. Today we're going to be talking to Lorien Fenton about Supersoldiers and mind control. I'll introduce Lorien later. Remember to check out our Facebook and Twitter page. If you do a search for Truth Sentinel or Scott Sentinel, you should find us. Any emails you want to Hello, welcome to Truth Sentinel, watching over the truth in the news. Today's date is the 7th of July 2014. A warm welcome to everyone. Thanks for your support, thanks for listening. Always appreciate it. Currently in London, returned from the Ukraine. Been back for a few days now. Just enjoying the weather in London. It was actually sunny earlier today, but it's now raining. Today's news. David Cameron has pledged to get to the truth of historical child sex abuse claims amongst politicians and even the cabinet of the UK Parliament. And there's supposed to be an announcement today of an inquiry that's going to take place. The Prime Minister Cameron said that there will be no stone unturned to find out about what happened. I suspect that there will be a few stones left unturned personally. Those stones have been left unturned for many years now. They've known about these child abuse allegations for many, many years. It's a big cover-up. BBC's Nick Robinson said the inquiry would look at claims covering the government, the NHS, which is the UK's health service, and the BBC. There's already been quite a number of allegations and arrests at the BBC, including Jimmy Savile and more recently Rolf Harris. Theresa May is expected to outline the plans today in the Commons, and the Home Secretary will also tell members of Parliament about a separate review of whether her department failed to act on claims of a paedophile ring in the 1980s. It seems like a lot of their past is catching up with them, and they're desperately trying to cover up as much as possible. Ex-Home Secretary, so he was actually a member of the Cabinet, Leon Britton, welcomed the independent review into the theoretical, although in many cases literal in the past, and probably up until the present as well, indoctrination process, which results in an inability to think independently. You could definitely say that about the vast majority of people in society seem to have lost their ability to think independently or critically about what they see on TV. Mind control is also a disruption of beliefs and affiliations, and re-education of basic beliefs and values. So Project MKUltra, sometimes referred to as the CIA's mind control program, is the name of the US government human research operation experimenting in the behavioural engineering of humans, a bit like the UK child abuse files. Most MKUltra records were deliberately destroyed in 1973 by order of the CIA director Richard Helms. So it's been quite difficult, if not impossible, for investigators really to get a complete understanding of what MKUltra were up to. And if you look at the stuff we know about them, it makes you wonder what they were doing that we didn't find out about, because they're sure to have destroyed the worst stuff first of all. So in 1945 the Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency was established and given a direct responsibility for Operation Paperclip, which is the program that recruited former Nazi scientists. They were perfect for this kind of work. Other projects included Project Chatter, Project Bluebird, and Project Artichoke. Okay, so they used things like LSD to experiment on people, sometimes with their knowledge, often without their knowledge. They also used other substances, substances which promoted illogical thinking and impulsiveness, substances which caused permanent brain damage and loss of memory. They were trying to experiment with brain washing and erasing people's minds. This was all, a lot of these people were people either taken straight off the streets or sent for any reason at all. scottsentinel9@gmail.com. That's scottsentinel9@gmail.com. Thanks to anyone who posts this show on your channel. I really appreciate if you're doing that, like Ron Gibson, for example, who also puts up Alex Jones's videos. If you are able to sort of spread Truth Sentinel out on the internet, make sure as many people as possible can see it, I would appreciate that. Especially if you see one of those channels that uploads quite a few videos, like Conspiracy Vault, for example. If you request that they put up our videos, then they'll probably do so. Help me to help you have a good listening experience. And let's get some more listeners if we can. Topics coming up in future episodes could include world disasters, honour killings, mysterious celebrity deaths, planned obsolescence, patterns in world events, the Dyatlov Pass incident, religious cults, really anything that comes on our radar. Other shows I've been listening to, I've been mostly listening to Hagman and Hagman, occasionally Alex Jones. I do find Alex Jones is concentrating a bit too much on the immigration issue. I know it's a big issue. It's an issue in the US, in the UK, with the lack of control over immigration. No one's saying they don't want people of different cultures to come into countries. There's just some control issues regarding benefits, I think, is the main problem for a lot of people. Yeah, I don't think it's good for people to travel to another country purely for benefits. But I'm not against immigration, but I think Alex Jones is focusing a bit too much on it lately. You know, people want a bit of balance. Seems it's gone, but I'll still continue listening. I would just say, just stop focusing so much on that one issue. It's getting a little bit boring, shall I say. So let's talk a bit about mind control anyway. Mind control, also known as brainwashing or coercive persuasion. Thought control or thought reform. Have you had your thoughts reformed today? Maybe if you've watched TV, you might have done. It's for missing files. I think when he uses that word welcomed, I think that's in the same way that you'd welcome, say, a 20-meter long crocodile into your house. He's not welcome at all because he's actually going to be part of the allegations. There's those that allege that he's been actually caught on video in some child pornography movies, alleged of course, but I think he's not going to be welcome this at all. And it was his responsibility to hand over the files. They've gone missing. I've heard a lot of rumours anyway that he's involved in this, and he will very quickly find himself accused of abuse. So they're probably desperately now trying to find any more files that they can throw away as well. There's even been allegations against a former Prime Minister and possibly even members of the royal family. Wouldn't it be great if they finally found enough evidence to put some of these people away, and so they can get the message that doesn't matter how important they perceive themselves to be, they're still not above the law. In Ukraine is to blockade 2 major cities which are still in rebel hands. It continues its operations against pro-Russian separatists. Ukrainian officials said they would now lay siege to the regional centres of Lugansk and Donetsk. Government forces regained control of the key rebel strongholds of Sloviansk and Kramatorsk on Saturday. Who knows what's going to happen in Ukraine? It was quite peaceful when I left, but that was not the east. That was in Odessa, Ukraine, where there were problems a month previously, but everything's okay there now. I think it depends what Russia's going to do next. Heathrow Airport has told passengers to ensure all electronic devices carried as hand baggage are charged before travel if they're flying to the US. The UK government has also revised its rules to state that if a device doesn't switch on, you won't be allowed to bring it on to the aircraft. I wonder if this has anything to do with the NSA, so they can gather your data from your switched on laptop but not from when it's switched off, because we all know that they actually don't care about your safety, so this